All right, good morning, everybody. Glad you could join me here on Better Abundance Facebook group. Today, we're going to be going over next level abundance. Very excited to be sharing the full webinar of everything that we're teaching here with Better Abundance. So I'm Jeff Kamke. Any of you are tuning in either through the Zoom link or through the Facebook group live. If any of you don't know me, what I do is I'm a financial practitioner. So we take what you would think about as like a traditional financial consultant or advisor, and take what we do is a lot of financial strategies with the tools of the elite wealthy. And I also have combined, and you'll learn in this presentation, kind of my backstory and how I've arrived at what I do. The other thing that you'll realize that when you go to a traditional financial person, they're not going to be able to really do anything as far as changing your thoughts or changing the energy that you emit around abundance or wealth, or doing anything to transform what goes on in your mind and the actions you take. And that's something that I saw was a big missing thing. So I've taken the two passions of mine, which is this wealth information that we're going to talk about today, along with the transformative aspect of that through some different like energy medicine type modalities that go very hand in hand with each other. So we're going to get into that today. I'm going to do a quick screen share here, bring up the PowerPoint, and then we will jump right in here, guys. So next level abundance. We're going to be talking today about transforming how you create abundance and wealth. And for me, you may have this definition as well. Abundance is not just money. It has really nothing to do with money in a sense. For me, abundance is your connection to the ever vast amount of possibilities available to us. And what I mean by that is I believe we have access to all things. We have unlimited resources when it comes to money, when it comes to health, when it comes to joy, when it comes to happiness, when it comes to spiritual things, when it comes to material things. I believe that we have the capacity to create whatever we want to in our life, and we have the ability to be tapped into the power of creation, the flow of abundance that's around us. So when I talk about abundance, don't just think money. That is a foundational piece. It's kind of one part of what we're going to be talking about and one thing that we teach. And then there is the wealth component. And what I mean by wealth is the ability to be able to be experiencing a level of freedom in your life around money, and be able to put together a larger sum of money that you can be benefited in your life to carry out your purpose and your passion in this life, and benefit your family and help the next generation, your kids or grandkids, up level in their life, go to another level of abundance. And that's what we're talking about today, obviously, with the masterclass name. So as we get talking about a lot of this stuff, I wanted to set that groundwork. Several of you, know me. I know that. My story begins back middle school, high school. I suffered from severe cystic acne, really bad. You can tell by this picture here. I don't remember what grade that was, somewhere early middle school, I think. And obviously not a pleasant look on my face. I had cysts all over my face, my back, my neck. It was not a great time. And, went through some, I would call some very dark phases in my life, and, didn't think very highly of myself, was not very social, had to learn social skills and communication skills once I was an adult, because back then I didn't develop them naturally along with kids, because I just really hid from the world because I was very embarrassed by the way I looked, obviously. So I've been through that, came out of that, out of high school, read Natural Cures They Don't Want You to Know About book by Kevin Trudeau. It was on TV infomercial, and many of you know within a few weeks that was literally gone, and learned a tremendous amount about health, wellness, diet, nutrition, toxins, vitamins, herbs, the whole gamut. And really was opened up to a whole nother realm of possibilities as far as it comes to our health, and really learned the true dynamics of what's going on out there in the world, as far as those that we go to for health, the knowledge they have, the toolkit that they have available to us, and how there's some other things available that usually get better results. So that prompted me, I think it was in 2000, I don't remember the year, 2007 or 2008, I think possibly. I enrolled in Clayton College of Natural Health and honestly didn't do a whole lot with it. Just very stupid. I paid for the whole thing up front, and I think it was about $5,000 I paid for, and I never even completed one class in that because it just was not resonating with me. So I can actually say I'm a college dropout. I started college barely and didn't do a darn thing with it. So fast forward a couple years after that, I had stayed in touch with Kevin Trudeau, a lot of his work, and he was creating a like a transformational organization that was based upon a lot of law of attraction, personal development, personal growth, business development, business growth type information. And was invited to join that organization actually, and was in that very heavily for a number of years. Basically, I equate it to probably over a master's degree that I would have spent and learned as far as information about how to transform yourself from where you're at, wherever your starting point is, to higher levels of abundance and success. And when I was in that organization, I was shown from a couple presenters some very cool energy medicine, like very advanced chiropractic techniques. And the picture you see down here, I was working on my good friend Jeff Finley. Some of you know him. And that was an alternative health business that I had started, and ultimately didn't really do quite enough in that business to really support the family, and ended up having to get back into an old career 4 years ago of lawn care and landscaping, which is good, but certainly not my passion. And you know, the failed college, the failed business, those were things that, you know, you go through those things to realize and get more clarity upon who you are, what your purpose is, what you want to give to the world. And it was because of those things that you arrive at a closer destination to your ultimate destination. I don't think you're ever fully there, but you're getting very close to, you know, fulfilling and living each day coming from the tapped in energy you feel from within when you're aligned with your purpose. That just naturally flows, and you wake up every day excited to do what you do, to talk about what you're talking about, to help people, to help clients, to learn more about what you're passionate about. When you're in that space, things just flow. And when I was doing the college and when I was doing this, I was never quite in alignment with that. So it's always all good, you know, always all good. Everything, there are no bad decisions, there are no bad choices. They just allow you to clarify. We're going to get into that in a little bit. And many of you know, let's see, what has it been, over 7 years ago, my wife and I were hit by a car down in Florida. And that was a major transformative time for us, put us through a lot of hardships financially, stress on family, obviously, but we came out of it much stronger, and it helped us get to where we're at today. So a little bit of my backstory, if you don't know who I am, and you know what got me to this point, what made me passionate about what I'm doing today. Now, in today's environment, there's a lot of political chaos, to say the least. A lot of prices are getting out of hand. I mean, gas prices have almost doubled in the last 6 months. So there's a lot of inflation, used car markets out of control. I've had a few people talk to me about how they've driven a car for a year or more and almost got a dealer trade-in level, what they paid for brand new. So prices are going out of control. It creates a lot of uncertainty, a lot of chaos, a lot of unknowingness. You may experience some of that, some economic fear of, you know, what's going to happen? Am I protected? Am I going to be able to, you know, take care of my family in the way that I want to? You know, or am I going to be caught in whatever is going on here and not be in a good situation going forward? That's just reality right now for a lot of us. No matter how positive you think, or no matter, you know, what you have in your bank account, those things just kind of naturally are in the ether, if you will. So many people are feeling those emotions and thinking those thoughts. It's easy to pick up on that stuff and have it influence you, you know, in the here and now. So we're going to be sharing some strategies in a few minutes about that piece of it, but just lay some groundwork. Now, if you You could be like us after our accident. We were having some financial trouble. We had to have some help from family. Thank goodness for that. You could also be, you meet people that they make six figures, they make $250,000 a year, and they're just as stressed out as the guy that makes $20,000 a year. So it doesn't matter where you're at as far as your income. Most people in America were trained a certain way around finances that most people, I think, feel stuck to some level on a financial hamster wheel, to where if they stop producing, trading their time for their money, you're just done. I mean, most people don't have enough in reserves in America that if they got off the hamster wheel, they wouldn't even be able to buy groceries the next week. It's literally that tight. There's so much stress around money. And it seems that, with all the advances in technology today, that we would be able to be more efficient with our time, and maybe we could only work 20 hours. I remember years ago, reading and listening to some information. I believe it was Earl Nightingale way back in like the 50s. And they were estimating at that time that the average work week would be reduced to around 20 hours because of the advancements in technology. And we've gone the complete opposite. Instead of working a 40-hour week, now it's admirable somehow to be hustling and pounding the pavement and working 60, 80, 100 hours a week. That's admirable now to get ahead. And it's just not a good thing. And some people have 2 and 3 jobs because, the jobs don't make enough income. And there's all kinds of things that people can do to feel stuck on the hamster wheel. So we want to be sharing with you some strategies today, not only to get your mindset right and it's just not your thoughts. It's more of the subconscious thoughts, the energy you emit around this topic of abundance and money and wealth, prosperity, along with some action steps you can take and some strategies and plans and tools. And I will give a disclaimer right here as I'm thinking about it. We're not financial consultants. What we do, we're financial strategists. We put together based on your situation, your strategy that you have already possibly, in the stage of life you're at, and your goals, your purpose. And we want to put together like a comprehensive program that helps you get where you want to get. So we don't make financial advice. We're not going to do that on this thing. This is an educational masterclass today. So I just want to throw that disclaimer out there for the crazy world we live in. So what we want to be able to do is start establishing for you how to arrive at the mindset, the consciousness, the awareness, the flow from within naturally of security, confidence, excitement around money, around prosperity, around abundance, so that you can begin to feel those things legitimately. You don't have to try to force them where they only come up every once in a while, but where you're coming from a space day in and day out, you feel security, you feel confidence, you feel excitement about your life and about what you're doing, the people you're around, the money that you're making, the impact you're making on the world. We want to have that be your new set point, your default. That's what we want to get you to. And we're going to teach you exactly how to do that in today's webinar in masterclass. So the other side of that is we're taught to spend money, we're taught to save money, but we want to be able to put those two things together so that you're spending and saving money at the same time, benefiting you and growing wealth. We're going to put money to work for you differently than you've probably thought before, unless you've heard me before in anything on Facebook or any live events that we've done in the last few years. So we're going to go over basically the 3 things today are going to be how to embody your innate or inherent nature of abundance and wealth, how to actually not just have it be something external from you, something that's a goal down line, but actually something that is within, something that is a part of you. You and it are one. We want to talk about exactly some of the basic foundational steps to embodiment of those things. The second thing we're going to be talking about is expansion of your finances, expanding your wealth, expanding your capacity financially with your money, be able to grow it, put it to work differently for you so that it becomes the bedrock of freedom and giving your purpose and passion into the world. And thirdly, towards the end, we're going to touch on efficiency of your money, how to basically take the money that you already have flowing through your hands, make some smart, strategic, wise moves with it, with maybe a different twist on how you think about money, to be able to improve your cash flow and obviously reduce taxes. That's a big thing. So we're going to talk about those three things. So let's jump in first. We're going to talk about the mindset part, because, you know, as I've gone through my life so far, I've seen, and I'll touch on this in a little bit further, but there's been a couple weak points or missing elements I've found throughout my life as it comes to abundance. And putting the inherent nature of abundance and wealth into your life is one of them. We have to do the inner work around abundance before we can go and move into the financial tools and strategies that actually build real wealth. So we're going to start here. So you might feel some of these things. Do you feel disconnected on any level from experiencing the fullness of the abundance that's available to you? You might feel stressed over money, just in general. You know, not necessarily you have a lot of debt, you might, but maybe just the thought of money or what you're doing with your money. There's just a lot of anxiety or stress around money. Maybe you have gone through a phase of your life, or maybe all of your life, just not tuned in to what your God-given design is, your purpose. What is that? Have you discovered it? Are you living it? That is a huge piece of experiencing abundance in your life, to where you wake up every day, like I said, and you are excited to be able to share that with the world. We want that to be something you're working towards, and show you how to start working towards that. There could be a feeling deep down that you're missing the mark in your life. Something's off. Something has not been in alignment for a very, very long time. Or maybe there's been something, you know, in the last few years that's gotten you off from that mark. Something's just not quite adding up, not lining up. You don't feel like you're connected to the flow in your life that maybe once was there, or you see in other people that you suspect can be there in your life. You just don't know how to connect the dots. Maybe, you know, we talked about in the beginning, abundance is a full life thing. So there's other aspects to abundance than just the financial aspect. There's your health, your mental, emotional, physical, spiritual health. Are you struggling with some of those? Maybe you have aches and pains. Maybe you don't sleep good. Maybe you have bad digestion. Maybe you have a disease label put on you by a health professional. Maybe you have relationship issues. Maybe you don't get along with your spouse. Maybe you don't have a good relationship with your kids. Maybe it's at work, you're not having synergy with the people you work with. Wherever that's at, if you feel struggle in any of those levels, that is a symptom and a sign that there's some disconnection between you and the flow of abundance in your life. You might feel like something's holding you back from enjoying the life you live. There's some restriction somewhere that keeps you from experiencing things to their fullest. We want to be able to, you know, get rid of that and diagnose that and do that. And maybe you even feel just stuck financially, not necessarily debt. It could be debt, because debt's a huge weight. We've experienced it, and we're pretty much on all of our way out of it for the most part. It is a huge weight, and it plays a role in how we think and the actions we take and the stress that we feel. It has an effect on our health. I've studied a lot of natural health in the last decade. I've been certified in many alternative health techniques, energy medicine techniques. And the number one reason for disease and illness in the body, according to many, many experts, is stress, emotional stress. That does so much for how we sleep, how we uptake nutrients, for how we rid toxins from the cells. There's just a wide variety of things that stress does. And because stress is so powerful in the thought process, is so powerful on the effects of the body, it can really have an adverse effect on our health. But also because stress is the number one thing in marriages that we have around finances. Financial stress can really wreak havoc. My wife and I have been there. We've had struggles around finances, and it's affected our marriage. The number one reason for divorce is financial reasons. So when we're talking about abundance, we have to look at the totality, the holistic nature of every component of your life. They all work together. And when there's financial discord, when there is debt, when there is struggle, it has an effect on our relationships, has an effect on our health. And just by changing that part of your life by doing the inner work around abundance and then the tools and strategies around abundance and wealth creation, that can actually improve your health potentially, can improve your relationships potentially. And I say potentially because there's disclaimers that obviously have to make, but knowing that if the stress is no longer there and you're not having that constantly weighted on your mind, your health can improve and your relationships can get better if you're not having to have that same dialogue with your spouse day in and day out if the money issues are resolving or have been completely resolved. And you might feel like money just is, you're a master to money. You don't master money, it masters you. You just don't have full control. Every decision you make, every fear you have, all the anxiety is ruled because of money. You aren't in control and don't have power over money. So we want to begin to start changing that stuff. So how do we do that? First step is we have to start releasing what holds you back. And what does hold you back from next level of abundance? Well, let's talk about a few things just briefly. So you could have money traumas, as I call them. Money traumas could be like we had 7 years ago. We were in an automobile accident, basically on foot, but we were struck by an automobile. Those types of traumas, divorces, job loss, businesses failing, any type of significant trauma. When we have traumatic experiences, it cements those patterns and those stress patterns in the brain, in the physiology, and can basically screw things up from that point forward. So when you have a money trauma, it not only can do things to your brain and to your mind and your thoughts, but it literally can have effects on your financial, on your checkbook. Not that any of us carry a checkbook anymore, but on our bank account, it has an effect on that. When we were in our accident, we were not working for a while and we, had medical bills and, you still have to live just because the insurance company pays you out 12 months after the fact. What do you do in that time frame? Well, it creates money traumas. So many of you have experienced other things than that, but you understand what I'm saying, that there's big things in our life that happen that affect our financial status and our ability to provide, and just, it can rack up debt. It can get us overspent where we're really in a bind and in a bad position. So that's one thing. The other thing is limiting beliefs. A lot of brain research, Dr. Bruce Lipton, somebody that I listen to quite a bit and studied a lot of his works. When you're growing up, you have certain brain wave frequencies that your brain is in. And so when you're young, your subconscious is wide open. Like right now, many of you know, we have a almost 6-year-old little boy and a 2.5-year-old little girl. And both of them, and you can see it in action day in and day out, they repeat verbatim the things you say, the things you do. They are just taking in everything from their environment, all the senses, and dumping it into their database without any analysis, without figuring it out, without anything. It just goes in and then it gets repeated. And that phase of brainwave begins to change as you start hitting, 6, 7, 8, 9, not only 9, 6, 7 years old, to where whatever's been put in gets repeated. So when we're growing up, and we can create limiting beliefs as we're older too, we can do it from our day-to-day living, but a lot of it gets established from what we saw. So this picture right here, the family's looking at the dad counting money out of his checkbook. And I can remember, growing up, my family, we had a few little short stints where, remember one week my dad brought home like $37 in the week from a new job that was commission based. And I can remember feeling just at a very young age, the stress and the, I didn't equate to everything. Now I can look back and go, oh yeah, that was obviously a big deal. But you get imprinted with those things as you see those things and observe those things and experience them firsthand. Those things get etched in your mind, and then you begin to just duplicate them, just like the little kid that sees mommy and daddy doing, whatever it is, having potato chips or eating pizza. I mean, that was one. We had pizza last night for pizza night, and my son walks out this morning with a slice of pizza in his hand because that's what he sees. That's what's in his environment. He repeats that. And so we do a lot of that around finances and around abundance. We just repeat what we saw. So if we had lack or we had scarcity growing up, we just repeat that stuff in our adult life. And then we wonder why we're not experiencing the fullness of abundance in our life. And that's part of the reason, is we have to start doing something about those limiting beliefs. And then money stresses. So we have these programs that run, we have thoughts around money. As I said in the very beginning, we have a lot of economic fear right now going on in 2021 with a change in presidency, the things that are going on there, coming off of a virus that's gone worldwide. And there's a lot of issues going on. A lot of people have stress around finances. So that is something that, can be on a micro scale, something within your family. It can be on a macro level, economically, in the nation and the world. A lot of things that can play into money stresses. Water heater goes out, or the car needs a new transmission or something. And those things create money stresses. And the interesting thing with stresses and a lot of these traumas and things that we experience, the more intensive emotion we experience around them, the more cemented in some of the training I've had. It's been described that adrenaline. So, adrenaline is when your heart really gets pounding and, maybe a police officer pulls up behind you and you feel adrenaline. That's adrenaline, right? When we experience things in our life where adrenaline gets really high, it's what's called the super glue of the subconscious mind. So when it gets really high, it locks in, it super glues in the associated physiology, emotions, hormones that get all off it. It locks that stuff into your body almost permanently, to where it has an adverse effect downline of the thoughts you think, the decisions you make, how your body performs, how your mind performs, what you attract into your life. It has a lot of damaging effects unless you know what to do. And we're going to start getting into what do you do. So one of the first key things, we're just going to go over 3 quick things, and we're going to get into some of the financial aspects of next level abundance. So one of the first key pillars, and I did a course, and you can find this on this group. It was a 7-day course. I'm going to revamp it here at some point and make it a 3-day course, I think, called the Better Abundance Code Training. And we went over a lot of the things that I've seen in the last decade working with clients, a lot of them more on the health level, personal development level, outside of just the financial piece. But just before that, when I was doing what was termed Life Enhancement Association, when I was working on clients a lot, these are the basics that I saw most people were not doing. They're very easy, a lot of them, to do, but most people aren't doing them. Even the people that I know that are like me, they've been around success training, they've read the books, they've been to the seminars, they've hired the mentors. They're still not applying some of these basic things that make all the difference. These are the foundational things. And these are things that I've had to do in my life, that I've gone through phases in my life where I haven't done them either. And I know to do them, I haven't done them. And that's a dynamic that will be for another webinar of, I know to do this, why aren't I doing it? Well, we're somewhat going to explain that today, but not, directly. So the first foundational piece here is identifying your dislikes. What is it in your life, about your goals, about where you feel like you're headed? We have this interesting dynamic with the way the mind works, is when somebody says, what do you want? I've asked people this, what do you want? What do you want your health to look like? Well, I don't want to be overweight. I don't want to eat, crappy food anymore. No. I ask you what you want, not what you don't want. And that, I've termed this, it's like the $1 million principle, because so many people are caught in what they don't like. I know before I met my wife, I was involved in a relationship for about 5 years. And I know after I was single, in between her and finding my wife, when I was doing a lot of very deep work on myself, I had to really concentrate on, like, okay, all I could think back to was all the issues I had in my previous relationship. And when I thought about what I wanted in a wife, I just kept thinking back on all the bad things, and the things that I didn't like, that didn't line up with who I would like to spend my life with. And I just kept thinking about not experiencing those things over again, instead of flipping it around. And I feel like it's almost a muscle you have to develop, to be able to think about what it is you don't like in your life and be able to flip it around and figure out what is it that I do want in my life. Because so much of the time we don't think in those positive terms. We are ingrained in such of a negative thought process society that it takes work to develop. Okay, if I don't like that, what is it that I do want? So that's really the question you have to ask yourself in a lot of areas of your life. What if I don't like this? What is it that I do want? What is it that I do like? And you really have to sometimes sit with that and really ponder it, and then ponder it again, ponder it again. It's something you're not going to just do once. It's an ongoing process. So here's a couple quick examples. I don't want any more debt versus I have $10,000 in liquid savings. So if somebody says, what do you want your finances to look like? You might think to your situation currently and go, well, I don't want any more debt, or, I don't want to have this many bills, or you think about those things instead of thinking about, okay, well, if I didn't have debt, how much money would I want? So you need to start thinking about those things and creating it in your mind first, and getting things that are in alignment with where you want to be going. Here's another one. What do you want to feel around finances? Well, I don't want to feel any more financial pressure. Instead of, I feel and experience confidence and control over my finances. It's a big difference, right? Big difference, especially when you feel the difference. I don't want to feel any more financial pressure. What's the emphasis on? Your subconscious brain does not register don't. So when you say any more financial pressure, the energy, the emotion is financial pressure. So you're thinking about that. Instead of thinking, I feel and experience confidence and control over my finances, the emphasis is on confidence and control over my finances. Totally different emotion, totally different energy. And that's the point you have to get to. That's one of the big missing things that most people don't do, even those that have been around personal development. I know many people, including myself, that have been around it for a decade, and sometimes still have to go back to these basics and be reminded of them again and put them into practice at a deeper level. So you're integrating them again and again and again until it becomes just, an inherent nature of the way you do things. There's another example I'm not going to keep going into. I think you get the point. So once we do that, we establish what we don't want. Then we have to really start zeroing in on what is it we do want. And here's something very powerful. I heard a talk back in 2012 from another health practitioner that used to be in seminary. He went through 7 years of seminary, and he started putting together how so much of the Bible is with personal development teachings, law of attraction teachings, and a lot of the health techniques that I had learned at that time. And one of the things he talked about was, in the Bible, I grew up in the church, so I remember pastors talking up on stage at Sunday mornings, talking about, you're headed this way towards sin and a life of misery, and obviously an afterlife of misery, and you need to repent and change direction. Instead of heading west, you need to head east. Instead of going down to hell, you need to go up towards heaven, right? And it was like a linear progression, right? It was either go this way, or go up or go down. Like it was that way. And Charles Robertson, the person I was listening to, was giving this talk back in 2012. He said, metanoia is I think it was either a Greek or Hebrew word, which means seek higher. So instead of thinking about on a linear plane where I can either go this way or this way, one or the other, to actually think about going up a level. So it's not up or down, it's I'm going this way and let's go up a level. It's seeking a higher level of thinking about things from a different perspective, from a higher vantage point. So when you're thinking about what you do want, don't just think about linearly, think about it quantumly, if you will, to where you're going up levels or up many levels. There's a book that one of my mentors, Marcy McPhee, has been talking about using. I've done the audiobook a few times, bought the book a while back called U Squared. It's all about quantum leaps. Some people don't have the circuitry mentally built up to do a quantum leap, and you can build to that, but just trying to do a quantum leap doesn't always happen immediately. It's something you have to build up a lot of things for. Now, I get into all that, but so really it's just when you're thinking about what you want, instead of thinking about, well, I don't want any more debt, or I'd like to have $10,000 in the bank, get really in touch with your higher self and or God or whatever, so it's in line with your purpose. And maybe your purpose is to have more than that. Maybe you're cutting yourself short, and you can make that a stepping stone. You can make $10,000 a stepping stone goal, but don't cut yourself short. Seek higher. How can what I am going for fulfill my purpose greater? How can it impact more people? Be thinking in a bigger, grander scheme. That's really the objective of the metanoia principle. Ask for higher powers. Yep. Check in with your intuition. Yep. I already mentioned all those things. Great. I'm ahead of my notes. So here's what we want to talk about with this. So here's a couple keys that you want to know as it comes to the whole idea of figuring out what it is you want. So ask what it is I do want instead of what I don't. Oh, sorry, this is a repeated thing. My bad. All right, I already took that out. So that's step one. We need to figure out what we don't want and go to what we do want. That's step one, right? Okay, so here's step two. We need to start getting the goals that we have, that we've created, and this is an ever ever moving. It's a flowing process. You're always going to be going back to your goals as you experience things, good or bad. You grow, you learn, you experience. You always have to go back to, okay, well, what do I want now? Where am I headed now? What direction now? What are my dreams and goals now? So as you're doing that fluid process, then you have to do something though along the way that is actually going to start neurologically and energetically bringing to life and creating, manifesting the things that you have in your mind. Because it starts here, and then there's some specific things you have to do to start materializing them in the physical world. So the first one is putting your goals on paper. And this is something that I knew about for 6 years, and it took me 6 years to do it. And I did it in 2016. I don't have my notebook super readily available. I should have had it here. I've held this up in past talks and webinars before. I wrote out a list in 2016. I expanded it. I've continually added to it. I take things out of it. But it's something that when I wrote that list, the point I was at in our life, we were still very much entrenched in, after the accident, financial struggle, trying to get a new business off the ground, my natural health business. We'd moved to a new location, trying to build relationships. It was a struggle at the time. And I wrote this list of things that seemed just like impossible. Like there's just no way that stuff's going to ever happen to me based on where I was at the point of writing it. And I can say now, was this 5 years later, I've accomplished quite a few things. I don't know the percent of things I've accomplished in there. I've accomplished an awful lot of stuff that as I look back to when I wrote that stuff down, I mean, there was no way in the world that stuff was going to ever happen. Just none. And now a lot of those things have happened. It's interesting that when you get things in your mind, put them on paper, what that does. And here's a little bit of the brain science into why. So when you write, and you write in with actually a pen or a pencil with your hand, and you write print, you're activating like over 10,000 neural pathways in the brain. So there is a connection between your mind and you're putting it into the physical by writing it, okay? And when you're doing that, you're emitting the energy, the emotion around what you're picturing or what you're desiring, your goals. You're emitting those things. The brain actually emits physical particles. They're not big, obviously. We don't go around, thinking high and knock somebody over because we had the particle of high come out of our brain and we knock somebody over. They're not big. They're not visible. Sorry for the screaming kiddos behind. We have those particles coming to and from our brain, from everybody else. All living things emit that. We're a transmitter and receiver of those particles. So when we're thinking about in the energy and the emotion of what we want, we're actually emitting those things, which is the law of attraction. We're putting those things out and they come back to us. The more we think about them, the more they come back. So writing things down is a huge thing. And I remember Lou Holtz, he was the old Notre Dame football coach. He had written out, I think, like 105 big life goals. And he accomplished like all but like 3 or 4 of them, the last that I'd heard. I don't know, I'm assuming he's probably accomplished the rest of them. But some of them were like winning a national championship in college football, which, not every coach wins a national championship, obviously, or the Super Bowl. So to be able to write those things down is a huge critical piece in creating the life that you want and the abundance that you want. If you don't do that, there's not the connection between the mind and what you're doing is strong. So it's very powerful to write them, rewrite them, reread them, make it an ongoing process. Maybe every month or every quarter, you're constantly doing that. You want to be able to do that because what you think about, or you become what you think about most of the time. You get what you're putting out all the time. And most people think that it's conscious. There was a book in the movie The Secret back in 2004. And it was basically this. You just think about the big house, think about all the stuff, think. Yeah, that's with your conscious mind. You don't think with your conscious mind very much. I think it's only 5% of the day is your conscious thoughts. The other 95% is the subconscious part back here. It's all the programming from when you grew up. It's all the programming that you've created through your life experience and the decisions and choices that you've made, the realizations you've made as an adult come from back here. So when you hear somebody say, yeah, you get what you think about, say, yeah, there's a nuance. I heard from Jeff, there's a nuance. It's not just what I think about consciously, it's what I subconsciously think about. Think of it as prayer. When you pray, it's a conscious prayer. And then sometimes people wonder, well, I prayed, why didn't God deliver? Well, you've got 95% of your prayers are coming from back here, requesting probably more negative things than positive. I think neuroscience tells us 70% of things are negative that come out of our brain. And if 95% of them are subconscious, we have a very good percentage of things that are negative, that are automatically all the time going out of your mind. 24/7 thoughts, 24/7 prayers, if you will, are negative and coming automatically. So you become what you think about most of the time is true, but you need to understand how the brain works and how energy works to really know. Because for you to really change back here, you have to know something, and knowing means it's a part of you. It's that embodiment. You have to embody these things, make them a part of you, become one with them. And then when you change back here to more positive, and that's sending out 24/7, 365 positive things that are congruent with where you're going, congruent with abundance, then you start seeing a change in what comes in and how God answers your prayers, if you will. So that's a very critical component. So lastly, we're going to talk about the third aspect. So first aspect is figuring out what I don't want, figuring out then what I do want. Second component is starting to write those goals down and create them. And actually, I'll say along with that, we're not the third one. This is still the second one. I'm getting ahead of my thoughts here. So you need to understand the way the subconscious brain works is pictures and feelings. When I say, think of grandma's house at Christmas, there's going to be an image that pops up in your mind, and there's going to be an emotion attached to that. Hopefully they're positive. I think for most people they are. And that's the way the subconscious works. When I say grandma's house, a word grandma doesn't flash in your mind, right? It's the picture of grandma. It's maybe in her house, in her living room with Christmas decorations, the smell of, pumpkin pie or, whatever it was. That's what floods your mind. It's the way your mind works. So as you're creating abundance, you need to understand that and then utilize that to your advantage. So if that's how the brain works, we also, along with writing things down, which does that to some level, we also need to take it a step further and write our goals down, plus get some images together. You've heard called a vision board, dream book. Mine's a dream book. It's right over there on the shelf. I've held it up before. It's a red book. I have pictures of everything that I'm wanting right now. And I change that. Sometimes things that I thought I wanted, I don't want. Some things I tweak a little bit. I do a little more research into maybe, something and realize, no, I thought I wanted this. No, I want this because it's better. Or maybe the next year's model came out and it's a better thing. So it's a constant evolution, but you can put those pictures of what you want. Spend time doing this because it's part of the creation process. When you create the images, you might spend an hour looking for one image that's like, no, that's the image. That's the thing. You might spend a month researching vehicle, that you want, and really figure out what options do I want. When you're doing that, you're spending all that time and all that emotion putting out those particles of what I want, and then they can come back to you. So you need to do that. And when you do that, it equals success, or it equals the abundance that you're wanting. It's the achievement or attainment of that goal or desire. So you need to be doing those couple things, really doing the couple steps that bring those things in neurologically and energetically. So I'm not going to spend too much time on that. There's a lot more content that I can produce on that, but that's just the basics in a nutshell. So then the third component is you need to build a neurocircuitry to create in your life your goals, dreams, and desires. There has to be the circuitry built. Most of us have, everybody has the circuitry for where you're at right now in life. When you go up levels, you have to build circuitry that's at those higher levels. That's why when people win the lottery, they have circuitry that's at where they were at before they won the lottery. And that's why it's 70, 80, 90% of people, I don't know the exact stats. I've seen varying stats on lottery winners, and within 5 years, the majority of them are broke. Why? They didn't change anything. They didn't up level themselves. They didn't go to another level. They didn't get it. They didn't hire a coach. They didn't change their thinking. They didn't change their spending habits. They didn't change their belief systems around money. They didn't clear out any of the stored traumas in their subconscious mind from their life experience. I mean, they didn't do any of that stuff, most of them. They don't have the circuitry to handle $100 million from the lottery. They can't do it. They literally short circuit. And when they do that, they default back to the grooves that are in the mind, which is where they were at before the money. That's the way we all function, is when we go beyond where we're at, we short circuit if the circuitry is not there. And that's why so many people struggle with abundance and money, is we short circuit, literally. We short circuit our brains. We key in fight or flight, and it's a defense mechanism. No, don't go to higher levels of abundance. Let me keep you safe down over here where you've been, where it's really comfortable and you're miserable, but that's safe. That's what we do. We don't want to do that anymore. We want to get out of that. So how do we build neurocircuitry for abundance? Well, I've got, like I said, on the Facebook page is a course. We went into this in depth. I'm not going to go into it in depth today. That's not the point today, but I can tell you, I can create a course. I can create a free course. I can create a paid course. The best way to get to this, and I've been working with a couple new people recently with this that have been around this stuff, and some of the latest techniques I've learned about 8 months ago or so now. I learned a very powerful technique called spiritual best, and best is bioenergetic synchronization technique. This is massively powerful for shifting this stuff at a very, very deep level. So what do I recommend to create the neurocircuitry? You need to get with me, just flat out. You need to schedule a call with me. I'll give you a free call. I'll maybe give you a free few calls off this webinar. I'm totally cool with that. I want you to experience this. I'm not trying to get your money. I'm trying to help you. So I'll gift you 1, 2, 3 of these. We'll see where you're at, but get with me. There'll be a link after I'm done. I'll post my Calendly link, and it's right on the Facebook group anyway, I think already, in the book now button. Schedule some time with me, or just message me. Schedule some time with me. Let's go into some of this stuff, because you will not go above your neurocircuitry. You will always default back to where you're at, and you can change neurocircuitry a lot of ways. I don't resonate with a few of them. Here's a couple examples. There's some teachers and trainers that say, put a rubber band around your wrist. And every time you think a negative thought, or every time you think something that's incongruent with where you're wanting to go, you snap the rubber band and experience the pain and will yourself into abundance. I don't agree with that. I absolutely don't agree with that. To me, they don't understand how the subconscious mind works and how to create change. Does it work for some people? I do know a few people that they like that. If it works for them, great. I'm very well aware of not all tools work for all people. So you have to find what works for you. For me, this is what works good. For the clients that I work with, this is what works tremendously well, is changing that. So you can do that. You can just try over and over and over and over and over again. Science has told us it takes 10,000 repetitions to program the subconscious mind. We can do that in usually a session or two around certain things. That's how I met my wife, was by programming the mind for what I wanted, for what I pictured, for what my list was of all the detail of what I wanted my wife to look like. I wrote a list, I think 22 specific characteristics. I think all of them have come true, because I did these steps. I wrote it down. I created a dream book. I neurologically connected to it, and I created it. That's what we're trying to do. That's the process. It's not super hard, but a lot of this neurocircuitry building you can do on yourself if you want to take the time to learn it. Most people don't. They just want the result. So get with me. Please just get with me and see what we can come up with, see what we can clear, see what we can reveal, see what you notice. I'm all about results. You guys know that. So that's going to be your best way to start building this neurocircuitry. And if you go on my Facebook group page, I do have other resources on there. If you look at days, I think 5 and 6 of the Better Abundance Code, it goes into a lot of things there about some specific techniques. You see this picture up here. I'm doing a thought field therapy technique. Down here is the Mortar March, which is part of the neurological reprogramming that we do, which is a very hands-on, user-friendly version of bioenergetic synchronization technique. A lot of things you can do. So that'd be my best bet, though, is just go ahead and schedule something with me and let's see what we can come up with. So that's the first concept. That's hopefully gives you a good idea of how to embody what we're doing, and getting into, just going to check time real quick here. All right. I spent a little more time on that, but I think it's so vital for what we're doing. So that's step 1, embodying the inherent nature of wealth and abundance. So step 2 now, or the second thing we're going to start getting into, is how to expand your financial abundance and wealth. How do you expand that? How do you grow? Part of it is obviously the embodiment part. And here's what I found, is what we're going to start talking about now, the actual financial tools that are used, and some of the financial mindsets, the wealth consciousness that people at a different level think and do. Those implementations of those tools and strategies by themselves can give you higher levels of abundance and take you to another level of abundance. Just the tools alone. And just by implementing the tools can have a positive effect on your thoughts and a positive effect on your stress. Because if you're stressed about not enough money, and we show you some programs and strategies and tools that give you more money, maybe not immediately, some do. Some of them are a longer term thing, a couple years, 2, 3, 4 years before you start seeing a big change. We're there. A couple things that we implemented, or one main thing that we implemented 3 years ago is starting to really blossom, really start showing up. And it's only going to get better from here. And the amount of money freedom and the amount of money flow that we're experiencing in our life, it's tremendous. So just by implementing those things has a positive effect on your energy, your stress, what you're doing, what you emit as far as the thoughts coming out of your brain. Can do that just by implementing the strategies. I want you to see how they work. They work very synergistically. Think of yin and yang. There's the inner work, the thought process, and there's the tools, and they go together to create the next level of abundance. It's really what we're going to get into now is those tools. So when I've gone through a ton of personal development training over the years, mainly within Global Information Network, and tremendous amounts of information that I've learned and applied in my life. And as I've done that, I've gotten to know, you're on the email list for other gurus, and I'm not going to go into names. I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus, but here's just a common piece that I saw missing within a lot of personal development. A lot of people even that are like abundance coaches or abundance gurus, they teach people how to grow abundance. And it's not that they don't, but I saw a common missing thing. So I've been around a lot of network marketing. I've been around a lot of personal development. There's a lot of similar training there. That you grow abundance, you attract more abundance, you manifest more abundance, you create abundance. And you do that by, getting your own business or joining a network marketing company or whatever. And I know a lot of people have had good success with those. A client right now is making very good money in a network marketing company. He's only been doing it for a short period of time. But it's very possible. I know that. For me, it's not a big resonating thing, although I've had a new opportunity come up recently that's like, it might not be bad. But total side note. So the idea is the abundance that's created from additional cash flow is great. I know some people that, my business has just exploded ever since I got my thoughts right. I've got all this money coming in. A lot of people at that point, the gurus that teach abundance, they've got more money coming into your life. But what do you do with it at that point? That's not plugging it into a system that doesn't do a whole lot from my vantage point. And so, the traditional financial system, the teachings and the marketing that goes into the traditional financial system is based and entrenched, not in abundance thinking, but generally in scarcity thinking. And most of that information is for the poor and middle class, not for somebody that's looking to move out of that and start creating abundance and financial freedom and independence in their life. It's not for that. Parking your money for 40 years so you can have access to it in retirement is not abundance. It's not wealth. Having a big nest egg that you can say, well, I could live off my interest later in life. I'll be a millionaire. That's not abundance. I'm sorry. That's just not abundance. Unless that's your specific goal and you're totally content with that. That's cool. But I think most of you listening to this, you understand it's not what I'm talking about. And you feel that within your life, that's not what I'm talking about, and it doesn't apply to you. I know people that they have a ton of Bitcoin and they look at their Coinbase wallet. Oh man, look at all this. Look at what this could turn into. But it doesn't affect their life today. It does not benefit their life today. They cannot improve their living situation. They can't release some of the stress that they feel over finances. Nothing is changing today in their life because of what's outside of them. Something down there, a strategy that's going to work out in 40 years if everything goes well. I don't like the risk of the markets. I don't like the volatility of the markets. That is not abundance. Abundance is totally separate from those things. So the big flaw I saw was, yes, I've got all this money coming in, but I don't have a wealth conscious system to put that money into to really do even more with it. That was a huge missing piece that I've discovered in everything I've experienced the last 10 or 12 years. The second one is just the lack of the traditional financial advice not living up to expectations, or what's been promised, or what's in the marketing materials, or what you hear people talk about. I don't know very many people that have flourished with traditional financial advice. I know some people that they've stuck a lot of money away. I know some very good deliberate savers. I know some people that are very responsible with those things. And that's a great habit, but it's not affecting their life today. It's not giving them more abundance. What is the point of sticking money in an account that you can get to in 40 years? That's not abundance. And even investments. I know I've read Tony Robbins' book, Money Master the Game, and some other reads similar to that, where the whole idea is, well, put your money in the market. Get an index fund that goes along with the S&P 500. That's the best place to park your money. It's going to grow at our estimated guaranteed, or not guaranteed, an estimated average rate of return. And you put in this much and you do dollar cost averaging, which means you consistently put in the same amount no matter whether the market's up or down, and you're going to get some that's on sale because it's a lower price and blah, 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 blah. I don't know very many people that are just like crushing it because they did that. Those are longer term strategies. Those are longer, you're pushing off abundance to some date in the distant future. It's not going to affect your life today. So that's the two big problems I had with what I've observed in life, is those two things. So let's start getting into a little bit of a different way of thinking about money and how we use money, what we do with our money, and some key principles and a few more observations I've made. Then we're going to jump into what the actual tools are. So when it comes to money, it's not what you know, it's not what you know about money that's the problem. It's what you think you've got all figured out that just really isn't adding up and showing up in reality. It's just not there. And that's a quote by Will Rogers. That's a problem, because we have this idea in a lot of things that we have it all figured out because we have a certain set of knowledge, and we never really check in with that knowledge to see if it's delivering on the promised results of that knowledge. And that's what happens so much with finances, is it's not delivering. It sounds good on paper, works really good in an illustration or with some fancy graphs, but it's not affecting or benefiting me in my day-to-day life right now. That's a problem. So have you ever wondered why the rich get richer and the poor get poorer? There's this increasing gap, right? Especially when you get inflation involved. That really hits the poor get poorer and the rich get richer, because the rich are running a lot of the companies that have cash flow. Anyway, have you ever wondered that? Like, why does that happen? There's been some people that have said, well, and even socialism is a belief system, a flawed belief system that says if we redistribute wealth evenly to all people, then everybody will be good. Those that can't, that are poor will become middle class. The people that are super rich will come down to the middle level, and everybody will be in the middle. And then there's other people that say, yes, but if you do that, within 5 years, all the money will flow back to where it was before, because the people that know how to make money, put money to work, generate money, build a business, cultivate culture within a company, attract people, they're leaders, they know how to inspire people, get people to do things. Those people will continue to do those things. The people that spend are in scarcity. They don't know what to do with their money. They don't know how to handle their money. They're impulsive. They, make poor decisions. They don't have good wisdom when it comes to money. Whatever the fact is, those things are not going to be changed. So the money will flow away from the people that were poor before. Maybe, they had money after they redistributed the wealth, but it's going to flow back away from them. And the people that know how to create it, it's going to flow back to them because they're the ones that know how to do it. That's why, because of the internal part. They've embodied abundance. And then the other people have embodied, a poor mentality, because not their own decision, but that's just what they grew up in. That's what they just kind of defaulted to. So here's a real good reason, though. The reason we're going to get into is the wealthy have information that you don't. They just don't. They don't get taught mutual funds. They don't get taught 401ks. They don't get taught those things. They're taught differently about how they think about money, how they view money, what they do with their money. And then the caveat to that is not only do they have the information, because you can have information, it doesn't do a darn thing in your life unless you put it in action, unless you apply it. And how do you know they've applied it? They have the result. And I'm showing that through a stack of cash. They have the wealth. They have it. They're living it. So here's an interesting thing about how the mind works, is when you have an increase in cash, you're going to figure out where to put that money in your living and lifestyle expenses. So maybe that's upgrading car, or maybe adding an addition to your home, or going on more vacations. When we have more money come in from our job or through investments or wherever it's coming from, it usually just kind of magically disappears. We up-level our living standards. We figure out a way to spend it. That's just the way the mind works, called Parkinson's law. Here's a couple other ways to say it. When your income expands, so will your expenses. They just go hand in hand. And then what was once a luxury, and I know this from a cell phone years ago, I've never been like up on the latest trends and, oh, I got to have the latest this or that. So I was very delayed in my conversion from what I call a dumb phone or a normal phone over to a smartphone, right? Seemed like one of the last people to do it. And then it's been, many years now, but I remember when I did that, I was like, oh my gosh, I was missing out on quite a bit. Like I could never go back. And that's part of Parkinson's law, is once it's expanded, it's hard to shrink back. And here's another quote that I've heard from some different mentors is, you're flying. Once you're in first class, you really don't ever want to go back to sitting at the back of the plane, right? Like once you can have your tray table down, and once you have extra delivery of food and drinks on the flight, and you have more leg room, and you get a blanket, and you have a curtain. And once you have all those things, like you don't want to give those up, right? That's just the way the mind works. You need to be aware of how the mind works when we're talking about abundance and wealth. Now, here's a few other observations I've made is I've been an entrepreneur since I was 13 years old. I've bought a $250,000 lawn and landscaping business when I was 22 years old. So I've been around some different things before, experienced quite a bit of things, and there's a lot that just didn't add up to me. And let me just touch on a few of these things here. I was never excited about parking my money in a 401k and just crossing my fingers and hoping. That never quite resonated with me. Like, why would I want to park my money somewhere? Especially when now that I know what I know now, why would you want to put that into a government account? There's just no way. Would never do that. And it didn't resonate with me. And I didn't know what to do though. And obviously, this is the interesting thing. When we put money away like that, we think the money's like on a shelf somewhere, but it's not. The institution that has our money is putting that money to use on the backside. And they're using the principles that the wealthy know how to, of the motion of money, the velocity of money. They're putting that money to work while you think it's just sitting there. They're making money from your money. And I don't totally agree with that. I'm good for win-wins, but it has to be, I'm winning well, not just barely winning, and they're winning really good. That's uneven. That's an uneven exchange. So another thing that I was not really in line with was, you have phases in your life. After our accident, we had to cut back. We absolutely had to do that. You have to tighten the budget. I get that. That's part of life. But you can't be the miserable millionaire living your whole life like that. Part of reaching abundance is an expansion. That's why we're talking about expanding your finances. Expanding your finances doesn't mean you just have more stress or whatever. It's about the internal growth that goes along with that. So when you have a cutting back, a scarcity mindset, I have to cut out and restrict, that is a metaphor for your life. You have to cut all those things back. You have to live tight. What does that do in your physical structure? Tight, tight, tight. I mean, you see some of these 90-year-old people that are just all shriveled up. Well, how much of that was their mindset over 90 years that created the actual physical? I mean, think about this. Last night, 2 nights ago, my daughter recently, she's in this phase where a lot of times she doesn't want me, like if she gets hurt, she wants mommy, doesn't want anything to do with me. So if I come up and try to rub her back, she no, mommy, pushes me away, right? And that's just been a phase that showed up in the last month or two. So I did that the other night, and I turned around, I think it was yesterday morning, I turned to walk out of the bedroom, and my wife's like, don't let it affect you. It's not personal. Like, yeah, I get that, but it's still kind of a bummer, you want to be there to console your little girl. And she's like, no, get away. So I was slouched over because my wife's like, you're hunching, you turned around and hunched and walked out. So our thoughts affect our physiology, right? So if just one One little experience, one 10-second experience with a little bit of emotion can make you hunch. What do you think about a lifetime of just constant over and over and over and over thoughts of scarcity and fear and anxiety do? If I hunch in a moment and then return to normal physiology after a few minutes, if I'm just constantly doing that, eventually it's going to stick. The subconscious will control all the physiology. It does control all the physiology, and it can do it on a more permanent basis. So think about that. Just the holisticness of what we're thinking about, our guiding principles around finance, and like, am I trying to always cut back, or am I expanding? And what metaphors I got for my life? Am I expanding into my life? Am I expanding into my body? Those are things we have to really think about that nobody's talking about. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, because nobody talks about it. Nobody puts this stuff together. And it's so important as you're trying to go to new levels of abundance. So I saw this firsthand. Some family on my wife's side, they really have lost their health. Our father-in-law, my wife's dad, passed away, I think in large part because of this, where they just exhausted themselves in their work. They just overworked. They never stopped. And when you're overworking, I've been in phases like this, you're overworking, you're eating terribly, you're eating at the wrong times, you gain weight, you have stress, it's hard on your heart, it's hard on your body, you have aches and pains. Like, it's just a nasty cycle to be in. So when you have to do that, that was something that never resonated with me either. Like, working more and stretching yourself thinner, and no, like, because you miss out on so much. I've had phases where I've had to work a lot, and you miss children, you miss your spouse, you're neglecting things in your house and your family. That's not a positive thing to have happen for long term. It may be a phase, but don't make it a lifestyle. So I always wanted to know, what else could I do? And obviously, like I said, working more hours, getting a second job, working overtime, those are short-term things, but if they're the lifestyle, they are going to probably limit you from as much abundance as you can experience. And even this, a lot of times people turn over their financial health and their financial destiny to somebody else that knows products and knows the markets, and you're basically gambling on, does this person gonna get me to the end result of a retirement where I'm gonna survive and flourish and do the things that I want to do? Like, that's very, very very important type of a thing, because you go through that and you only know if they succeeded at the end. Like, you don't know halfway through. Like, I mean, you obviously have trends, but nobody knows the markets. Nobody knows what the volatility is going to do. Nobody has any idea of that stuff. Obviously, people that control it all do, but as far as the masses, we have no idea. We're just going along for the ride. So I never really wanted to put and turn over my financial life that you have one shot at to somebody else and hoping they know the right avenues for me to go. That just never jived with me either. I don't know what you feel on that, but that's not trying to down anybody in that profession, but I know some people in there and some that are good, some that are just, they're just kind of rehashing what the industry has you do. So I always came up to this thing. There had to be a better way. And up until 3 years ago, I didn't have any idea what it was. I just knew I didn't want to partake in the things I just mentioned, but what do I want? So here's a few of the things that were part of what I always wanted. And maybe you'll resonate with some of these too. And then as we get closer to these last couple of little points, I'll put together what is it that will allow us to not do the things that I just said that I didn't agree with, and maybe you don't agree with either. And then how do we actually live this and achieve some of the things we're talking about here of getting some better financial answers? So I didn't want to have to park my money for a long period of time, basically all my working years. I want to be able to enjoy my money now. I grew up, I had new cars, I had jet ski, I could do what I want. I could, go to trainings and have coaches and all that. I've had a lot of that stuff. And I didn't want to have to sacrifice that just because I had to dump all the money that I'd put into those things into some magic account that was going to make me rich in 40 years. I didn't want to do that. Like, I wanted to be able to have both. Like, couldn't I have both? Maybe. And I wanted the money that I was making and doing strategic things with to increase, but I didn't want it to sacrifice it, because we have this belief that we either take care of ourselves now and we sacrifice the end, Or we plan for the end and sacrifice now. Like, no, I'm not either or. I'm win-win. It has to be a win-win. Even in my life, it has to be a win-win. I have to win now and I have to win later. That's cool. Let's do that. Let's figure that out. Well, something came in 4 years ago that allowed me to do that. We'll talk about that here in just a minute. And I have 2 children. I'm sure many of you have children or families or your grandchildren. And you want to be able to, as you go up to next levels of abundance and you gain knowledge about finances and how the mind works, you obviously want to be able to transfer that stuff to the next generation. You want your heirs to be able to continue growth. And see, most of us don't think in terms of like, we think of our individual purposes, but we don't think about the purpose for our family. Like, what is the purpose for our family? Well, my wife and I know quite a bit about that. And as our kids get a little older and we see what resonates with them, that'll come into more view. But we don't think about those things. Like, we want what we do in this lifetime to benefit the purpose and the passions of our kids to carry on whatever they're here to do. So we don't think like that. I think it'd be better if we did. So I want to be able to make sure that I'm leaving my children not only money, but the right knowledge so that they don't get spoiled and they can, take that money to the next level if that's their purpose. Maybe it's not their purpose. We'll find out. So for me, this is my personal quote. To me, we should all be living in mansions and driving BMWs if we want to, if we want to. I know some people legitimately don't have any interest in that. That's totally cool. For those that do, I think we should. I think a lot more of us, if we knew what to do, we would be able to arrive at this type of a level. So let's get into this last point and then we'll jump into things. So for me, I've had several mentors tell me this, we focus on material things. Wealth is material. It's, going to stay here when we leave after we die. It's not coming with us. And what's the point of talking about growing wealth? What's the point of talking about all this? I get the purpose and I get, abundance and having a life of more happiness and, better health, all those things. But why do you keep talking about the stuff? Why do you keep talking about the money? Because it's a starting point for many people to be working on goals and working on the expansion, on more of the tangible physical things in this life, and be able to get out of your way and release things that hold you back and undo the parts of you that aren't the true you, the true version of you. When you're doing all that self inner work, it's about that. It's about the growth. It's about the expansion. It's about who you become as you're starting to work towards, okay, I'm going to make more money. What part of my thought process do I need to release? What part of a limiting belief? What part of a trauma do I need to release in order to think differently and expand in my business or create more money? Well, when you're releasing those things, you're tapping more into the flow of abundance, and then you can create more of that stuff. That's the whole goal. So let's talk now about, I'm going to grab a quick sip of water here. We're going to talk about the way that money flows in your life and the option you've probably never been told about. So most of us, we know about this. We can be a borrower. Need a house, you go to the bank, get a mortgage. That's how you buy the car. And you make payments over, 30 years back to the bank, or if you move, you start the clock over again. We do that with a car, might do that with equipment. We might do that in our business, X-ray machine, we finance it, lease it, and there it goes. That's pretty common, right? We do that. So we go to a bank or credit union, some sort of financial institution. We get the finance amount from them, the loan amount, pay for whatever it is, and then we're making the principal and interest back to the financial institution. That's what most of us know. That's what most of us do. Now, like I mentioned, I have one family member that's really good at this. I have a really good friend that's really good at this, and that's the saver. And that is, you're basically making payments on the front end to yourself with no interest, obviously. It's just principal payments to yourself, essentially. And at some point, you've reached enough in the bank that you can go purchase that car or pay for upgrades to your home with cash instead of having to finance it. So, that's obviously a superior way of dealing with things because you don't have the stress. You're not losing the money that would go out to interest. It's a better way of doing it. You don't have the guillotine hanging over your head of, what happens if I can't pay for this? Then the bank's going to come and get my car or, seize my house or whatever it is. So it's superior. So I'm going to touch real quick on a quick example here of how money flows. And then I'm going to get into the third area that you probably have never heard about or even thought about this is possible. So let's just talk about, this is an old school example. So this is a guy that owns a paint store, and he's got a gallon of paint, $6. Obviously there's no gallon of paint, $6 anymore, right? Or probably $20, $30, $40 now, maybe even more than that in the last 6 months. So he could do what we're always taught in the financial world, which is park your money. So he could park his can of paint on his shelves, and he could wait, cross his fingers and wait, a decade plus. And as inflation happens and prices go up, his can of paint 11 years later would be worth 3 times as much. That's pretty good, right? Goes up to $18. So you could just let it sit. It's 11 years at 10%. Is that right there? That's pretty good, right? But what he didn't know is, like, on the back end of what financial institutions are doing and what the wealthy know to do is they know that not parking your money, but moving the money is what allows you to grow even more wealth. So here's another example. That paint store owner, instead of parking his paint can on the shelf, he could actually sell the can of paint, make a $2 profit over it. And if he turned 10 cans of paint, that's $20. Because he knows he can get more cans of paint in to replenish what he sold off his shelf. So just with 1 can of paint, essentially, he could do that. So that's obviously a very slim example. He only sold 1 can of paint a year. Hopefully he sells more things in his store, right? But that's $20 of profit over 11 years is $220. That's a $208 difference. So when we're taught very heavily through the media, the finance media, the news media, through, pretty much everybody, friends, family, all marketing materials, all gurus that we go to around finance. We go to our, financial advisor who we think is all knowledgeable about money. This is what they tell us to do. This over here, the motion of money is how corporations run. It's how banks and financial institutions run. They move money. If you think about, you go into a bank, you put your money in your savings account. The bank is using that money on the back side. They're loaning it out to the next guy that walks in and needs, a $5,000 loan. It's going to that guy, and they're making money off of your savings with interest, and they're making more interest than you're paying you. It's not really a good gig for you. I mean, when you really break down, I'm not gonna get into it now, like how a bank works, most of us would be like, well, why would I participate in such a goofy system? Well, we all do, because that's all we know. But when we move the money, that's going to give us much more profit. So we want to be able to know how we can put our money to work for us in a different way. So here's an example of how that works. We're showing you how the saver works for a period of time. This is a capitalization period that we go through, and this is how a private banker functions. Okay, and I'm not talking about creating a bank. I'm not talking about, you go build a building and hire staff and now you're a bank. I'm talking about a type of way of thinking about and using your money, and it's just termed the private banker. So you're modeling the way you run finances like a bank would, just privately in your own household with your own, financial system. And I'll show you what all that looks like. So for a period of time, you're saving some money, putting it into this particular private bank, and then after that, you can make loans. And when you make loans, you're shifting the paradigm. Because see, what we're doing is, most Americans, is we go to the bank, we get the loan, and then we're always making a monthly payment. Well, we can do the same thing. We can take some savings, put it strategically in this private bank, and then we can, instead of going to Chase or Wells Fargo or US Bank or Huntington or Fifth Third or wherever our bank is, we go to ourselves, essentially, get that loan. Instead of the payment going to Wells Fargo or Chase or Sally Mae or wherever your payments are going, they go back to you. So you're still making payments, you still have loans, you're basically functioning as if you do now. It's just the flow of the money becomes differently. And you might be thinking, as I did, like, okay, well, how does that work? Really, can you do that? Like, what kind of a financial instrument allows you to do that? We'll get into that in just a few minutes, but let me just show you conceptually the flow of money here for a moment. So over a period of time, we do that over and over again. And just think about, if your car payment right now, let's just say it's a $500 a month car payment. What would it mean if that $500 payment wasn't lost forever? Meaning, when you make that payment, you never see that $500 again. It goes to the bottom line of some financial institution or bank, right? But if that money was being paid back to you, and every month you essentially got $500 more in your life to do something with, that adds up over a period of time. If you had think back, if all the cars you had paid for over your lifetime thus far, if you had all that money back plus interest, what kind of a change would that make in your life? That'd be pretty significant. Most people don't need millions of dollars. If they just got freed up enough, the stress would come off. That would change a lot of things. It would change their attitude, change their possibilities. It would open up new avenues for new abundance and more ways to grow, more things that come into their life just by that one change. And that's what we're talking about being able to do here, is functioning as a saver and then functioning as a debtor, but being in debt to yourself and paying yourself. The flow of money thing we'll talk about, because you say, well, how do I pay myself and how's all that work? We'll get into it. Don't worry, you won't be confused. And it may take a little time to wrap your mind around it. That's okay. It took me 6 months to even really start thinking in this way, and probably 2 years to figure out, like, looking at most situations in life through this lens, and you find it it's such a superior way of thinking about money. It's pretty crazy that we were taught such a very unimpressive way of thinking about money. It's amazing. So here, real quick, here's how a bank works, so you can see this. So let's say you're the bank here in the middle. You know, it's your bank. Like we bank with Huntington. Maybe you bank with somebody else, Chase or Fifth Third or whatever the bank name is. And you go to that bank, and most people are gonna, you know, they have money in the bank over here. You know, this says you deposit 100,000 in the bank. I don't know if most people do that, but most people have loans. They have a mortgage, they have a car loan, maybe they've got a reconstruction loan through the bank to, you know, make some upgrades to their house. Maybe they did some debt consolidation because they had student loans, or, you know, maybe life happened, they had some medical bills or something. You know, maybe they had have a crown or a root canal or something that they didn't expect, and that, you know, had $3,000-4,000, and they consolidate all that. Pardon me. So the way a bank works is you put money into the bank along with your neighbor and everybody else in town. They put money in the bank. Well, then the bank is loaning that money out to, you know, it could be all your stuff. You know, you put the money in, and they loan you basically your money back, and then charge you interest, more interest than you're being paid on the money you put in there, which doesn't seem quite right. Like, if I'm giving you money and a business is able to profit from it, shouldn't I be profiting more than the person that's profiting from my money? That would be kind of what makes sense, but you don't. You're on the losing end of allowing them to use your money. Anyway, so you have all these things going on. There's a house payment you're making to the bank. There's the car payment you're making to the bank, the mortgage or the construction loan, debt reconsolidation, you know, whatever all the things are going to the bank. So the bank is receiving your money, lending it to you, and then you're paying the bank back. So it's kind of good to be in the position of the bank, because you're basically getting all the money on all stages of the game. So what would be better? Be better for you to be out here making all the payments to the bank, or would it be better for you to be in the middle and you be in the position of the bank where you can be receiving all the payments? And that's what this slide is all about, is being in that position of seeing where all the money is coming from. It's coming in to your private bank instead of to all the outside banks, or the outside bank. It's all in one place. So here's another visual of how this works. So we have a financial instrument. We'll talk about and what that is in just a minute. We have that financial instrument, and like I said back here, this blue period where you're saving is putting money into this financial instrument. And then after a very short period of time, generally, it could be a little longer depending on how it's funded, but generally within about 30 days, you can take a loan against the cash value in this particular instrument. And that loan is essentially your private bank. And then from there, you can take that money that you're getting out of your private bank, essentially, or not out of, but against your cash value. So it's not really making a withdrawal, but you're getting a loan essentially, as the money you have is collateralized. So you're getting a loan on that money. And then you can take that money and go pay off a debt or multiple debts. And we'll talk about that towards the end. You can do it with an asset, or you know, income producing asset. You can make the loan a down payment on real estate. You could make that loan, you pay off an x-ray machine if you're a chiropractor, or a hoist if you're a mechanic. And instead of having the lease payment on that x-ray machine, or the financing on that you know, hoist if you're the mechanic, you're making those payments back. Then what you're doing is you're paying off that asset in your business, the x-ray machine or that hoist, and the principal and interest payment that you would normally be making to, direct capital or whatever the financing company is, those payments you would pay back and replenish your bank here. But let's say I know of some loan interest or some lease interest rates that are very, very high, over 10% for x-ray machines. Well, what if that extra 10%, instead of going to the other institution, was going back into here? You're just recapturing interest costs that were normally lost to you and your business. And that's the power of what we're doing here, is once you realize that I can change the flow of money in my life, still making payments, still purchase things, have loans, it's all good. It's the movement of money. And when you move the money, it grows faster than if I just park it. But this is how you can begin to recapture things. Now, if we're talking about debt, when you do this type of a scenario here where you're paying off some debt with some savings and then you're paying it back, that debt becomes an asset instead of a liability, because it turns into an asset, because the money coming back, there's still future money you have to make. I mean, any payment you're making is a future dollar you're earning, whether it's a credit card payment or a mortgage payment. It's still future money you have to make to pay it back, but it's where's the money going in that payment? It's going back to you. So that's what makes paying off a debt, like a college loan or different types of debts, so it makes it gain and grow your net worth, is because the money's coming back to you instead of to the bank. So here's a quick example I'm going to go through. This is traditionally a car loan. If you were to go to your local bank, say you need a $25,000 loan, 60-month terms, it'd be about $500 a month with interest, which would give you actually $30,000 there. So about $5,000 of interest, which would be what? 25% interest. To do that, you need a credit report and approval, and we all know we love that process, right? You don't really own the car. It's a disadvantage until it's completely paid off. So it's really the bank's car. That's why there's a lien on it. And that $30,000, the principal for the car and the interest over the 60 months is gone forever. That $30,000 is gone forever. Now, if you're able to, or not able to make payments, you're unable to make the payments on that car, you can obviously be hit with some late fees and penalties. Debt collectors, it hits your credit report, makes you less eligible for future financing, at least for a period of time until it gets cleaned up. If you don't make those payments long enough, the bank says, hey, that's my car, I have a lien on it, you're not making the payments, it's mine, I'm going to send a tow truck in the middle of the night and yank it out of your yard. Obviously, like I said, credit report takes a hit. So that's the traditional way of doing it. Now let's talk about a little bit more concrete what I'm describing here. You still, you fund your private bank and you take a $25,000 loan from that private bank. And you still make the same arrangement payment-wise as you would have with a normal bank. You're still paying $500 a month. But the good thing is there's no credit report. You don't have to do anything like that. You just get the money usually within a few days and you can go buy the car. So it's an advantage there. You obviously own the car because you've paid for it with cash. But that cash was a strategic move, not just, if you paid for cash outright, that money's still gone forever. This way, the money in this financial instrument in your private bank is actually still growing for you on the backside while you took a $25,000 loan against that money and went and paid for this car. So it's an advantage because you own it when you drive it off the lot. So the $25,000 is recaptured essentially because that money is being paid back into this financial instrument, which then you can use over and over and over again. So when you combine the $30,000 that would normally be lost, it's basically a full $55,000 difference when you're combining the $25,000 and the $30,000. So that's a big swing in one direction to recapture this, because it's going back directly into your bank account. I mean, it'd really be $60,000 if you did everything as I'm saying here. It'd really be a $60,000 swing. Now, if you're unable to make the payments, there's no penalties or fees. There's no debt collectors. There's no repossession. It doesn't even touch your credit because these things are a private loan essentially between you and the carrier of these types of programs. So it doesn't affect anything. In fact, you actually technically never need to make the payment. You obviously always want to, because it's part of a strategy of moving money more than one time and keeping it in motion and able to grow your wealth that way. So you might be asking, okay, what is this private bank? What is the financial instrument behind it? Well, it's the most secure, historic type of an instrument that we have available to us. This is not mutual funds. Those have not been around very long. It's not, any type of investment account. It's not any other type of savings account. It's not CDs. It's not money markets. It's not any of those things. It's actually a overfunded permanent whole life insurance policy. And like several people that I've talked to in the last few years about this, most people are trained very, like Dave Ramsey, he despises whole life insurance, just despises it. And what we're talking about here is a very particularly designed way to use whole life in a way that most people don't know. Most agents don't know. I've talked to several agents that have no clue about this. And they've been in the business for 20 years. So just because they're in the industry doesn't mean they know how to use the upper levels of the industry and how corporations, banks, and the wealthy and those in the know use these types of instruments. So that's what it is, because these types of instruments have been around through all kinds of, worldwide issues, and that it's the strongest way to put your money into something and allow it to give you multiple benefits simultaneously. It's way safer, way more secure. There's a longer track record of success and positive results with it than anything else out there. That's why we use these. If a 401k allowed us to do this, we would use it, but it doesn't allow you to do that. So that's why we go to what works. So there's a couple particular ways that we structure these in order to accomplish what we're talking about. There's a high cash value. There's a very particular type of a rider that we build the program with that allows us to have very high cash value. Traditionally, a whole life insurance policy has no cash value for the first at least 2 to 3 years, sometimes even as much as 5. There's very little in there until the policy gets going. We're talking about having very high cash value within the first 30 days, depending on how they're funded. There's a guaranteed return. There's a guaranteed return of 4%. And that's tax-free guaranteed. So it's probably more like 6 or 7% guaranteed. And that's guaranteed. Is your mutual fund guaranteed? Is your investment account with your local Edward Jones guaranteed? No, you don't have guarantees. You don't know what's going to happen. It's all dependent upon something external. You don't have any idea. The only thing that's guaranteed with a lot of stuff is that the fund manager, the person that's managing those funds, is going to get paid whether he performs for you or not. That's not a good guarantee. A guarantee is a guarantee of growth that gives you confidence and security. And I know what my money's doing. I know where it's going. And you might be saying, but Jeff, 4% tax-free still isn't that good. That's, barely above inflation. I get that, but it's still guaranteed. And this is just a foundational kind of a side benefit. We're using these to be able to be your own bank, to recapture principal and interest. In the slide before, you're able to recapture $25,000 car plus interest, $30,000. That's way more percent-wise than 4%. So what we're able to do simultaneously, this is working on the inside of the policy, the guaranteed rate of return. We're also able to use this policy at the exact same moment in time while this inside's growing at 4%, we can take this money and recapture that money. So you're getting way more than 4% return, but part of the return is how you use the policy. Now it's going all in inside the policy. So hopefully that makes sense. There's dividends that come from these. There's a dividend that gets paid out. Most of these companies have been around for over 140 years. They've paid out dividends. They're not guaranteed, but they've paid out dividends every single year. They've paid out dividends through the Great Depression. They paid out through all the world wars. They are stable. They are very, very stable. They have the lowest historic risk of any type of a financial instrument out there. And so when you get the dividend helps add to what's going on with growth inside the policy. They are permanent. So once you have them, the only way that they'd ever go away is if you stop paying for them, which would obviously be silly because you're using them in a very particular way here. You'd always want to be doing that. They're protected. So they're asset protected. A lot of states have provisions where you put money into these types of programs, they're asset protected. So the advantage to that, and what the elite know, and what a lot of corporations know, is that if I can put my money into one thing and that one thing gives me multiple benefits at the same time, that's superior to putting my money in a type of a program or instrument that grows, then I have to put separate money into something else that gives me asset protection. I have to go hire an attorney. He has to set up trusts and do all this fancy, expensive stuff that gives me the ability to be asset protected. The wealthy say, no, I can put my money into this and it does those things for me all in the same. I can use the same money and it does all those things simultaneously for me. That's better. That's more efficient thinking. And it's a better use of your dollars. It's tax-free growth, like I mentioned, and there's also a death benefit that's associated with this. Obviously, being a life insurance policy, the death benefit is what most insurance agents write policies for that are whole life or term. We're talking about the death benefits, not really the consideration. How we're using the policy is our own private bank is the consideration, and the death benefit's just icing on the cake. Like right now, in the 3 years we've had ours, my death benefit has grown 25%. I started out around 400,000. I'm over $500,000 of death benefit, but I'm able to use the cash. We've recaptured quite a bit in the last few years. So it's about all of looking at all moves financially, what's going on, and looking at all that holistically and figuring out what's the best use of my money. And this by far exceeds pretty much anything else out there. And then we always want to be using the top companies that are out there. And there's a handful that are very, very good. They've been around for a very long time. They have billions of dollars in assets. They're stable. They know what they're doing. They have really good products. They take care of their agents well. They take care of the customers well. The growth is good. The death benefits are really good. It's just, that's what we want to deal with. We don't want to deal with companies that could potentially go out of business or have to be merged with another company or bought out. We want to deal with the best of the best, obviously. So that's a little bit about how that works. Now, if you want to know more, we'll talk about that towards the end, but that's just giving you some highlights of how this works and what it would look like applied in your situation. So if you're, like us, you're kind of like we were coming off the accident, trying to get on our feet financially, trying to fix some credit issues, trying to do a lot of that. This type of a thing works good on a little bit smaller scale. We started with a $10,000 policy. That means $10,000 a year is getting saved in this policy. And that means that there's a percent of that $10,000 and it grows every single year, how much we have access to. Right now, we're at 100%. We put in $10,000 this year. We're going to have a loan of $10,000 that we can get back slightly more actually than $10,000 that we can put to use in our business. We can go buy something that appreciates money. We can put it into specific types of alternative investments. We can purchase equipment. We can purchase training. We can purchase, hire a mentor. We can do a lot of those things with that. And that's very powerful because then by year 10, we put in $10,000. We're going to get way more than, it might be closer to 12 or 14 or $15,000. I don't know the exact numbers off the top of my head, but it continues to grow every year. Your bank essentially has more capabilities each and every year. It's a very powerful thing. So if you're starting out, you can start a little bit lower. You can do that. We work with clients that are nearing the retirement stage. Okay, how does this apply to retirement? Well, we want to make sure that you have guarantees in retirement. We want to make sure that if possible, your standard of living goes up in retirement. We want you to be able to experience another level of abundance even in retirement. We want to put your money to work for you. And we have some programs available. I'm not going to talk too much about on here. We have some programs that get per month guaranteed what most people are excited about in a year as far as returns. And it's a great thing. We've done that. We've put money from a sold house and that money is now churning out our monthly payment for where we're renting. It's great. We got increased our standard of living very much just by implementing these types of programs and these types of strategies. I've talked about that quite a bit on this Facebook group. And it's really cool. You can take basically a program and up level your finances without having to make more money, without doing a whole lot of things. You can just strategically put your money to work better for you and increase abundance. That's what we're trying to teach here and show you how to be able to do. So there is that program available to clients. It's not something that we're going to just start everybody on, but it's something that's available at the right place. And we always want to, when we start dealing with a client or working with you, we want to know what your goals are, stage of life, what scenarios you've got, what cash flow you've got, and we will go through more of that towards the end. But that's what we want to know. We want to be able to put the right thing in place for where you're at with all of this in your life. So if you're at retirement, we want to be able to make sure that you have more certainty, more guarantees, more confidence around your money in the retirement stage. And there's some moving pieces that we can use with that, but these private banks can be an essential piece of that, is you can start recapturing quite a bit of money that would normally be lost. We're dealing with a client right now. There's some home repairs and things, and we want to use that strategically. So instead of having to pay for an upgrade of furnace or for a new transmission or a new roof or an addition on your deck, whatever you're doing, that money that would normally be gone and lost, you've paid for it, it's out of your hands forever. That money actually comes back into your family and can actually add to your net worth. We want to be able to show you how to do the things that you normally would do, but have it grow your wealth. So if you had to put on a $10,000 roof, you would be essentially $10,000 to the positive instead of $10,000 to the negative. So that would positively impact you as you started getting into retirement. So there's a lot of cool things we can do, a lot of strategies around retirement. If you own a business and you have cash flow, high cash flow, we work with some chiropractors. They have high cash flow. They also have equipment that they need to buy, and they go to training. You know, one of our clients spends an awful lot of money on training, as I have in the past. There's always things you can learn. You can always hone your skills, always get better, always serve the people in your sphere at a higher level. So you can use these to go get more money or more training through the money that you're going to recapture, and add that into the mix. So if, you know, a $70,000 x-ray machine, instead of it being out 70,000, you've actually gained a net swing of 70,000 plus interest, maybe 80,000 or 90,000. That positively affects your business. It gives you more working capital. We want to be able to do those things. So no matter really your stage of life, there's not a whole lot that can exclude you. There's maybe some scenarios that aren't as beneficial. We might not steer you in this direction, but that's what getting with us would do. And at the end, I'll talk about how to, you know, get with us if you want to know more and at least answer some questions. I'm certainly not a salesy guy. If whatever, you know, you have going on isn't a right fit, then that's totally cool. I'm never going to push somebody into doing anything like this. So that's the second piece, is the expansion, and the main tool that we use with that. And I'm just going to finish up here just in the last few minutes on the third element, getting more efficient with the money that's flowing into your life by lowering taxes and improving your cash flow, and just a couple strategies here. So somebody that's a really cool guy, he's awesome. He's written some very powerful books. Some of the very first books I read around alternative thinking on finances, and really taking what he calls the sacred cows around finance and the things that we should do and the way we think about money, and really dispels a lot of those myths and a lot of those perceptions, and it really rips them apart and says, you know, they're kind of mainly there to benefit the institutions and not benefit the client. He talks about ways that you have money that is basically, you know, you're leaving money behind, basically. Cash is leaking, as he terms it. There's cash flow leaks. And the 4 I's he talks about are taxes, or the IRS, there's investments, there's interest, and insurance. So let's go through these and I'll just touch on them a little bit. So with taxes, there's tax strategies that your CPA can use to lower your taxes. If you're an employee, you have about 500 laws to minimize your taxes. If you're a corporation or you own your own business, you're an entrepreneur and you have an LLC or S Corp, or you're a larger company or a C Corp, or whatever your structure is, be a partnership, there's over 5,000 laws for the business to minimize their taxes. So hopefully you have a business structure, and if you do, hopefully your accountant is taking advantage of as many deductions as possible, because taxes are a huge, they erode wealth creation. They erode gain because of how much is needing to go. Most people pay an exorbitant amount of taxes, between all taxes, whether it's sales tax, property tax, income tax, you know, whatever the taxes are. I've heard estimates of as much as 60%, 60 cents of every dollar you earn goes to taxes. So any way we can reduce taxation is positive. And we do have programs for clients that, when they're at the right point, can do that even further. It's nothing I can go into detail about here, but you do hear celebrities, you hear athletes, professional athletes, they have, you know, oh, I have like, I'm a huge Tom Brady fan. He's got his Best Buddies Foundation. And you hear of, you know, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. You hear of these things that most normal average people aren't going to do. But there's strategies outside of just what your CPA can do in a business structure that can lower your taxes even further. So, you know, you want to know more about that, you have to get with me one-on-one. It's something I can't talk, you know, on a webinar about or anything. Now, the second one is investments. And what do I mean by how are you leaking cash in your investments? Well, when the market goes down, you've just lost money. Kind of on paper, hasn't really affected you exactly, you know, in your day-to-day living, but there's losses incurred because of volatility, because of the ups and the downs. So you're leaking cash essentially there. And obviously any of your investment accounts or your retirement accounts, the person managing them has fees associated with that. There can be some fees. And you might say, yeah, but Jeff, that's such a small amount, it doesn't affect it. It doesn't affect it that year, but you have to look at the volume of interest in what was termed opportunity cost, what that money that went to pay the fees for the commissions for your financial planner or whatever all the other commissions are going for, what could that money have turned into if it wasn't out of your account? If it stayed in your account and it grew compounded over time, it can be as much as 20, 30, 40%. I've heard in Tony Robbins' Master the Money Game, it can be as much as 60% by the time you're well into your retirement of what that small itty bitty 0.75% fee is. Well, it can actually add up to a lot. We don't think it's a lot because we don't do the math, but when it's advertised to us as a very small percentage, oh, no big deal. Well, it has a big impact. So that's where we can be losing fees or losing cash, losing growth, losing abundance in our life because of how our investments are put. And if you want to know more about that, we can talk. I'm not a big investment guy. I'm not, like I said, not a financial planner. We don't get into investments and what to do there. We're talking about strategies on how to, you know, maximize the money that you have in your life. So there's interest. You're losing money to interest. If you can do some strategic things, like we have a vehicle that's been paid off, we could refinance that if we needed to and pay down higher interest rates. That saves us interest. Instead of paying 22% on a credit card and you paid, say, 6% on a refinanced auto loan, you just saved 16%. And if you actually did the volume of interest over time, it's probably way more than what you would think. And then there's insurance. A lot of times you're overpaying on your insurance. You can call around, get better quotes, talk to somebody that is an expert. This is something we don't do in-house. Be somebody just so you're aware of that if you shop around for insurance and deal with somebody that does some strategic things with insurance, you can save money that would be normally leaking. Now, when we deal with a client, we're working with a client, there's debt that can get paid off. We can actually go through what's called a financial freedom analysis, and we can save quite a bit of money over the long haul. And I'm going to give you, this is somebody that I've known for probably about 10 years. It's also a banking client. Her friend is my accountant that introduced me to all this, actually. And this is actually she's given permission for us to share this. This is actually her specific plan that was developed back 3 years ago for her. She had a few credit cards, and then a policy was built for her that would allow her to pay this off in an accelerated rate, essentially. So this is all the moving pieces. You don't need to get into that. I'm not going to highlight all that, but here's what you really need to look at is the scorecard. The normal payment she was making, maybe there were the minimums, maybe they were more than the minimums, but the payment she was making prior to doing her own family or her own private bank, she was going to be paying on those few credit cards. And like I said, oops, wrong way. That was what, 6 credit cards? She's going to be paying for over 10 years on that. Some of those were very high interest rates, 25, 22, 16, 15, and almost 14. That accumulated interest was going to total $20,000 of interest that she's going to pay. But because she structured a private bank accordingly and paid off some of those debts, she had available right away within the first 30 days about $6,900 that she paid off 2 credit cards right away with. And then by year 2, she had an additional amount. She paid off a 3rd one, or almost a 3rd one. And so what's cool is that by doing the recapturing of money, and when we recapture in a debt scenario, we're actually just applying the first debt's payments to the second or third debt's payments and paying those off in an accelerated fashion. It's basically recapturing. You're just not putting it back in your bank account. You're putting it to use towards the next debt to pay down. So when you do it that way, it went from 122 months or 10 years down to a year and a half, and only $2,800 worth of interest instead of $20,000 of interest. So that's a almost $18,000 savings and time of 8 years that she would be tying up that cash flow towards all those debts. So it's a significant shift in the right direction. Like I said, this is just typically in the debt scenario of how to pay off debt at an accelerated rate. So that's one thing that we would do in a consult. So let's talk about that for a second. So we can do the debt. We can do create a strategy that, no, I want to buy an X-ray machine. No, I want to buy a hoist. No, I want to buy a bulldozer. No, I want to hire a mentor. No, I want to go to get certified in this, or I want to go back to school and learn this. You can use this for that. You can use this for, heck, you can even use this as a college savings plan and have this on your kid. You can do it that way. A lot of flexibility built into this. And that's something that when we start working with a client, then we will really kind of figure out what's the best angle to work with this on and apply this to. So I'm going to wrap up here, just a couple last slides. So this is my family. Many of you know my wife, Elizabeth, and our son, Alex, and our daughter, Jenna. And it's very cool to have these guys learn a lot of this information and start applying it. I've had several cool conversations with Alex about, starting his own business at some point, and the difference in putting your money to work for you instead of always having to go out and earn the next dollar. And he's starting to understand some of those things. So it'd be cool to see a lot of these things applied. My wife, she's gone through a lot of very cool transformations the last year or so, hiring some coaches, and has really helped me in a lot of areas grow and expand and reach my fullest potential. So I'm very grateful for her in my life. Our daughter, she's a sweetheart. She's very much into pink. The other day we were having a conversation, and I think my wife was asking her what color something was, and she goes, well, not pink. Like, there's no other colors but pink. So it's very cool to have a family. Many of you I know have families, and they're such a great asset. There's some struggles that come with it and a lot of growth, but we've been reading some parenting books that are kind of called conscious parenting, about how your kids come to you, are there for your growth. And as you get better as a parent, a lot of that improvement comes from releasing things that are holding you back. So it's very much in line with the embodiment that we talked about early on in this. So very cool to have family and all that it brings. So where do we go from here? So I'm talking about these things. Where do we go from here? If you're listening to this and you say, yeah, I'd like to learn more, where do we go? Well, we can do basically the best next step, which is getting on a call together and going over more of your specific situation, understanding where you're at, what your stage of life is at, what your goals are, and then I'll give you some options on some strategies, and we go from there. So if we do that and you want to know more, what's the next step? What would this look like for you? Well, we'd potentially be able to start thinking about, if you're towards the retirement stage, tax-free retirement. There's some strategies that will give you tax-free retirement income by using these whole life policies in the very particular way we're talking about. The growth inside them is generally tax-free. If you're an entrepreneur, you want to be able to, not even an entrepreneur, you're in your working years, and you want to be able to start feeling like you can win with every financial move you make. Like, you're one up on the banks, you're one up on the financial institutions, not doing anything unethically or, illegally or anything by any means, but just by strategy, you're like, no, I'm winning here. Like when we sold our house and we took a good percentage of that and put it into a alternate investment, and it's now paying for our monthly rent. Well, I'm winning with that financial move. I'm winning absolutely, because I'm not losing the principal. I'm not losing what we got out of the house, but it's also going to work for me and funding our monthly payment on a much nicer, newer, larger house, significantly larger house. So we're winning with every financial move. Wouldn't it be cool to be able to feel like, man, I'm winning? Like, instead of looking at my bills and knowing those are deducting from my net worth, I've put in place a strategy that's adding to my net worth, or my money is going to work for me, and the money that I've earned is making me additional money that makes me more free in my life. We want to be able to win with every financial move. And it goes back to what we talked about a little bit ago too. We want to be able to experience the joy of using your money now and growing wealth for the future. We want to be able to do those things simultaneously, not make them mutually exclusive. We want to be able to do them together. And actually, by using your money now can accelerate wealth creation later. Isn't that interesting how a shift in thinking can do the opposite of what we think it is not possible, where it's either or. We can either enjoy money now, sacrifice later, or we sacrifice now to enjoy later. It doesn't have to be like that. We can do it together. And hopefully what we've talked about today will help you make sense of that. And then to me, it's always about your heirs and what the legacy you leave and what you're doing in this world, the people you're going to impact, and how your children and your grandchildren or nieces and nephews, how they impact the world because of the choices you made. See, my grandfather was a third generation farmer, and we moved into his house 4 years ago, and that's the house we just recently sold. And I've always thought, as we're going through my grandpa's end of life, and he didn't have things set up properly, and it really got us thinking, as we had just started learning a lot of this information at the time, how if they knew things differently, that 3 generations of farming, all the hard work and all the sweat and all the hot days in the field and all the mud and just all the years of hard work with all the 4 a.m. mornings of feeding the animals and milking the cows and just all that went into that, and how there was really no change economically from generation to generation. It did not change. And there was no transferring of wealth. There was no transferring of the knowledge that came from 3 generations of farming. Can you imagine the knowledge if it was packaged, what we could have learned? I mean, some of it would not be applicable to today's living, obviously, but the life lessons that came from that. And I know a few things that my grandpa told me, but so much of that stuff is lost and you don't get back. And so it's not always about the financial gain, but it's about the life lessons that they learned in business and in farming and with their families. None of that gets transferred. And that's what we want to be able to set up for you. If you want to talk to me further about this, is that for you? You would be able to give that to your kids. So what we can do on a strategy call would be talking about, if you have debt, the fastest way to pay that off. We've got the software that I showed you, the financial freedom analysis, that gives the fastest ways to doing that, shows you how much interest is potentially saved in time and how much that then can go to fund other things in the future. It helps you get out that financial hamster wheel. And many of you I know have money goals. If you do have money goals, or you're in the process of developing those money goals from what we talked about earlier, of writing down your list, creating your vision board, those money goals, we can help you accomplish them much faster. A client of Private Banking Concepts, not a personal client, was a chiropractor. He had a goal of being retired in 5 years. He already had good cash flow, had a good business going. Because of the programs we have available, he literally was retired in 5 weeks. That's not obviously average. That's not probably going to happen for most people, but that gives you the flexibility and the ability to do things faster, accomplish your goals faster because of the right financial strategy. So I talked about earlier, you get your thinking right. That's one piece, but you put the right financial tools in place, the financial tools that the wealthy use, those in the know use, that think about and use their money differently. You put those in place and it helps open up doors that were not possible to walk through before. So we can talk about that for you and your unique situations, your unique goals, what you want to do. We might be able to blow the doors off your goals. Who knows? It certainly has done that in our life, like with our house that I mentioned. And then one of our clients right now, we've been having a few strategy calls with him as we're getting set to launch his program on exactly what steps do we want to take? Where do we put the money first? Where do we want to put it to get the best return, to put that money to use the best, to recapture as much as possible? We want to be able to do that. So as I said, you can get with me on the first part, the embodiment part. If you would like to schedule a simple call with me where we would go through like some clearing, if you will, releasing some of the things that hold you back, or some of the synchronizing. Once you know what your goals are, we can actually synchronize your subconscious to those goals. That's what I had when I was wanting to be married, find my ideal partner. I was synchronized at an event in September of 2012 to my ideal mate, and by November, I had met my wife. So it can happen fast for you once you get things dialed in. So I would like to help you speed up the abundance in your life, and I'm willing to do it for free for a session or multiple sessions. Actually, I'm willing to do that. If you want to do that, or schedule a one-on-one strategy session with me or my wife, we work in this together. There's a Calendly link that's on my Facebook group. If you're watching this through the Facebook group, do the book now button. I've got plenty of options and availability. Click that for either one. So if you want to just message me outright too, if you want to take advantage of the Better Abundance clearing session, or you want to do a one-on-one strategy session for looking at the financial tools and instruments that we have available and what that would look like for you. It's an information session. I'm not going to sell you anything. It's not about selling. It's information. I'm going to give you some information. You can go from there. You can talk to any of our clients that we've worked with. I'm not a pushy, salesy guy. Don't be turned off and think, well, I'm not going to talk to Jeff because I don't want to be sold into something I'm not interested in. Don't worry about that. Let your guard down. This is just an information call. It's a strategy call. I'll let you know more of how it would work for you, what it would look like. And you make the decisions that feel right for you. I'm very intuitive based on the sales protocol. I give you information. If it feels right, we move forward. If it doesn't feel right, you say so, and I leave you alone. So make that, jot that down in your mind so you know where we're at on that. So with that, that's really it. I'll put a link also with this video. If this video is showing up on anything else now or in the future, you can click that link as well so you can schedule a time and we can go through it together. So with that, on Zoom, I don't think I have any questions that have come in. So with that, if you do have any questions after watching this, just put them in the comments below the video. I'd be happy to answer them. If you have people that could benefit from these 2 hours that we've spent together, please share this video and the link with somebody and invite them into the group, the Better Abundance group, and be happy to share this. If you know people that you'd like to get together and do an event like this, I can come and do a seminar. We can do a webinar for your group. If you have people that you would like to expose this to, please let me know, and I'd be happy to do that. Got a couple things in the works right now with another client, with some network marketing organization and a group of some chiropractors that are going to be exposed to more of this information. So yeah, just want to leave you guys with that. And hopefully this was beneficial to you. Hopefully you understood what we're talking about. There's a lot more we could go into, but this was kind of just a brief overview in 2 hours. I know it's brief, but it's 2 hours of just some of the highlights of what we're doing and how we're helping people. And if you feel led, like I need what he's talking about, please reach out, do that, and we'll get something scheduled for a clearing session, or we can even do both for a strategy session. So I will leave you guys with that. Happy Saturday. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, everybody. I'm going to go and spend a few minutes with family and get some lunch because I'm pretty hungry. So you guys take care, and we'll talk to you real soon. Bye-bye.